I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, 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 what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here at I Mix What I Like. Come on in, everybody. Welcome to those who are already here. And to those who are, as you come on in, file in, please do show some respect by liking, sharing, subscribing, supporting the platform. Good evening. Welcome to this Saturday night live, old man night, where I have what I think is a pretty a good lineup, a good show setup. Actually, I was in many ways seeing these Saturday night lives as a fun hangout, and it will be, but ended up having more prepared to go over than I thought. So right on, welcome, 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 welcome everybody, and definitely please do check out Saturdays with Renee earlier today over there on Black Liberation Media, featuring the Brokish crew. It was great. And I did catch that some of you who did see it were hating on my outfit. Shame on you. Oh, this is dope. Soundtrack to a coup d'etat is on Canopy. Really? We're going to have more discussion. As promised, there's still more to come on this. Yeah, there will be. I don't know if Mtume is going to be doing it, but I am going to have some guests coming to the show soon to discuss initially one particular element of the film, but yeah, more to come. I hope, sort of in the back of my mind, I intend to do many more discussions. And yeah. All right, AJ Johnson, thank you for getting us started. So I started, if you haven't noticed, I started a little challenge for the first hour. We're going to do a little fundraising challenge. So let's see. Am I able to pull it up from here? I don't think so. But the challenge, if you look at the goal, or if you look at the goal in the chat on YouTube, it says if I get 10 teal super chats, I think that's $5 or more, I will make right here my now legendary UncleNearest smoked old fashioned. And all the money raised during the live tonight will go to the National Jericho Movement. So Um, so so AJ Johnson has gotten us started. Salute to you. Thank you very much. If I get 9 more in a little over an hour, or a little less than an hour, I guess now, I'll make my Uncle Nearest smoked old fashioned, and all the money raised will go to the Jericho movement. But yeah, that's very good news that it's on. Leah, that, don't hate on the beauty of the hoodie. All right, let me get into a couple things, and then before I leave, I will get to Q&A. So even if you're here now and have to leave, if you uh, can somehow highlight that you're asking a question in the chat, I'll likely find it, and then you can come back later and see the response. Otherwise, folks, if you would just you know obviously put stuff in the chat as you like, but if there's a question or comment you want me to get to, I'll come back and check for them a little bit later. Um, but first up, I did. So I mentioned. So first up, let me. So if you saw the thumbnail for the film that came out a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, maybe Saturday Night, the Netflix film. That's where I got um, the thumbnail picture from, uh, and that was more just a play on this fake Saturday Night Live that I'm doing here. But this is the uh, where did this was it on Netflix? One of these, or Prime, I guess, one of these streaming channels. But and it's about the launching of Saturday Night Live in 1975, the night that it launched, October 11th, 1975. And it's all right. I didn't mind watching it. I don't have much to say about it tonight. I just wanted to share with you where I'm getting the thumbnail. Uh, what I did like about it, though, and I don't know if I ever knew this, is that Saturday Night Live was only greenlit initially because NBC was in a dispute with Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson, whose shows were replayed on Saturday night because it wasn't thought that there would be that big an audience for new programming, and NBC just sort of, you know, an additional cash grab um, by re-airing some Johnny Carsons on Saturday night. And then Johnny Carson got into a contract dispute where essentially he wanted more. He was trying to, I think, slowly start to retire. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something about he wanted to mess with that Saturday night. He threatened to either pull his shows or do something. And he had a lot of pull at the time, something like that. And so through some sort of beef, uh, the network said, "Well, we'll let this guy, uh, Lorne Michaels, put his little crew of comics together and do this show, and we expect it to fail, and that's just going to be that." So that was part of the backdrop, and then uh, you saw, George Carlin was supposed to be the first comic to appear, but he was just getting high and didn't really want to participate, and just sort of did his monologue, and that was that. They booked a couple of comedians because Lorne Michaels didn't know if he was going to have enough sketches. A lot of chaos, drugs, and a win were my notes there. So, because obviously the show was still on, it became successful, and blah 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 blah. So that was, that was just where that came. It was a fun watch. It was, all right. I did the other thing I wanted to share was that I did just get this sent to me, and it was made off of an interview I was able to do with Daruba bin Wahad in the backyard of Dr. Orasami Burton this past summer, and where Daruba talked about the BLA, Black Liberation Army, and its relationship to Hamas politically and to Palestinian liberation. And oh, they didn't put their name here. Now I'm forgetting who. My bad. But anyway, they reached out and asked if they could, what I thought about it. I said it's great, So I'll put the link in the show description, and this just recounts that discussion in zine format. It's pretty fly, and reminds of some of the importance of the international linkages between Black liberation and Palestinian liberation. So, salute to them. And all right, Cynical, thank you very much for the super chat. How likely do you think that poor whites will gain class consciousness? Do you believe that we are doomed to a violent revolution? Will the whites lead it? So that's 2 of 10. Now, if you want, we need 8 more. If you want to see the legendary UncleNearest, smoked old-fashioned. But and again, all the money raised during this live will be going to the Jericho movement in support of political prisoners in similar struggles. The short answer is I don't have a lot of optimism around. I mean, this is why I do have an affinity for Afro pessimism. And that's funny. This comes up because I am looking to expand, engage some more discussion around that with someone. But that's sort of where I keep ending up. I'm not over my race first traumatic experience with race in this country. I mean, and that's essentially what it comes down to: race in this world. And as much obviously as I engage and appreciate materialist Marxist left thinking, I can't. I'm not capable at this point of getting over. So I don't have, much like Dr. King said at the end of his life, I'm not confident that whites will ever be psychologically organized, as I think he said it, to rid themselves of white supremacy. And this is why we keep running into some, but that said, I think it's important to continue to endeavor to help them reach a certain class consciousness, and to the extent violent revolution is made necessary by those in power, that these whites will get involved. I don't know about leading, but so thank you for the super chat. Random thought. Dr. Jab, did something happen to your full interview with Dr. James about contextualizing Angela Davis? That interview is such fire. Something did happen. I just moved it over here and into in different segments, so it's still here, and it's on this channel, but not in one full spot. And that interview is fire. But that's what happened. All right. Okay. I'll check back some of the other questions coming in a little bit, but thank you all for the super chat, and please continue with the challenge. Got about 40 minutes to get. I think 7 more is needed to get this UncleNearest goal to be achieved. All right. Let's see. Okay, where am I going next? All right. So for my classes, I did want to talk a little bit tonight about well, I'm going to talk a little bit about this Thomas Glander book TimothyGlander book, rather. Sorry, forgive me. That I'm using for my course this winter, well, into the fall in sociology of mass communication, because it's such a fascinating and brilliant chapter. I want to talk a little bit about it tonight. The importance of propaganda, a little bit about crypto and Bitcoin, a little bit about the erasure of Palestinian actresses from major films, and a little bit about the CIA writing scripts. We might do Socialist Reconstruction Chapter 6. And then I definitely, before we get out of here, we are definitely going to go over a little bit at least of the video that dropped today from Professor Dave Explains and his beef with LordJamar on the Godfrey platform over Flat Earth. And it got heated. We definitely go look at that, because my argument is, this is where I'm I don't know if I'm coining this, maybe, but this is where I'm going with this now, that Flat Earth is the intellectual equivalent to financial literacy in economics or media. So Flat Earth is to science what financial literacy is to economics. But we'll talk more about that. A little bit more on buying power, I think. A fascinating video about what's going on in Namibia. And then we'll talk a little bit about what looks like will be, I don't know about a debate, but a discussion and some disagreement and around Stuart Hall and Afro-pessimism. And then I'll come back for some Q&A and discussion with you all before we wrap up and get into I guess what for some of you at least will be a real Saturday night. And I hope it's live. All right, so let me pull this up here. Won't spend too much time with it, but this chapter here in the book, The Origins of Mass Communication Research by TimothyGlander, and I'll show, let me show you the cover here. This book is excellent. It's an excellent book about the history of mass communication research in this country, and a proper political frame on it. Certainly better than the frame I got in grad school, and one I hope is being brought into grad school programs, though I don't suspect that it is. And the long story short is that, as I wrote here in my notes, ultimately what Glander is considering is the fear among the ruling elite of the Luigis of the world. The two world wars, 1 and 2, that is, were as much about solidifying techniques of national propaganda as they were about winning wars for natural resources and colonial territory. So that's sort of the theme of my approach for my classes, and what I would share with you all here is that what I think this chapter does, and the book more broadly does, is to maybe it's an introduction, but it's an extension of, if maybe, or for some of us, an introduction to the fears of the ruling elite in the 20th century, who did not take for granted that the form of settler colonial democracy that we see now would take form, who were not convinced at the time that socialists and communists and black liberationists were defeated. They did not take any of that for granted, as seems to be the case in many ways now. At least they thought it necessary to organize how the ruling elite would continue to sustain themselves, with an understanding that they were having to manipulate an increasing both number and diverse population of so-called citizens. So World War I, before World War I, Glander argues that propaganda was evolved largely to promote the First World War, to promote to encourage young white men in particular to go fight in Europe. And then after World War One, and then with enhanced evolution after World War Two, the goal became maintaining a social order. And they're explicit in discussing that if propaganda can be used for war, it can certainly be used for peace. And there was a vigorous discussion in this country, sometimes debate over how to define propaganda. Was it good? Was it bad? To what extent, as Glander talks a lot about in this book, um, it's a critical look at the foundation of for the field of mass communication and its interaction more broadly with society's institution of education. That is, as Glander even asks at one point in this chapter, will those in power were asking, will education be used to propagandize people, or will it be used to teach Americans how to think critically to resist propaganda? And the former is the version that won out. That is, that education would be part of a process that propagandizes and manipulates the public opinion of most of the people in this country. All right, so that's just a quick summary or an overview of what he's saying here, and I'll just share a little bit more uh, as here in just a little bit more of the chapter, just to uh, add a little bit to it here. So, as it says here in the pink, for instance, we take for granted a highly centralized and powerful national government, a ubiquitous celebrity rife electronic media, and an equally ubiquitous consumer culture. We take for granted the view of selfhood, the psychological characteristics, and the values that follow from these circumstances. Nevertheless, to the people of the early part of this century, that is the 20th, people who witnessed the enormous societal, social, and cultural changes that conditioned the emergence of mass society, these things were by no means certain. And from many perspectives, they were by no means desirable. All right. So that's just what his way of saying what I was just saying a moment ago. They did not take for granted that any of this, that this kind of society that we live in today was going to evolve. And those who didn't agree with it needed to be dealt with in one way or another. The focus here is largely through propaganda. Prior to the outbreak of World War One, the term propaganda possessed neither pejorative connotations nor apparently the kind of inherent interest that would prompt scholars to take it up as an important object of study. That would change. And this figure, Harold Laswell, who in my classes we'll talk a little bit more about as a sort of uh, exemplar of what was happening here. He became a major figure who, coming, of course, at the University of Chicago, and who would eventually side with the idea that propaganda was necessary for a country that claimed to be a democracy. So like when Chomsky popularized the phrase propaganda is to democracy what violence is to totalitarianism. In other words, a society that has more of a claim to freedom and democracy needs more propaganda. This is where he was getting it from. The foundations of that approach or that frame of reference begin with these folks like Harold Laswell, uh, um, uh, what's his name? We'll come back to it in a second. But what was his name? Laswell's. I've just been reading this, so he's a lot of the focus here. But there's another guy we'll come back to in a minute. And it's just uh, Merton was another one at one point that he worked with. But this we'll come back to this. But um, the the point being that it became clear just that this idea that uh, uh, Americans had evolved an individualist ethic and were being promoted or encouraged or some to mythologies around independence, free will, individual sovereignty, the rugged individual, the American exceptionalist ethic, all of that required that the individual be maintained within a certain propagandized logic. You can't go too far. That freedom and that free will had to be managed. Uh, so this goes over some of the history as I've talked about before on this platform. George Creel, the pre World War One evolution of propagandizing people to prepare them for war. But let's see, the part I wanted to this is so, and I know lately I've been talking a lot about selling free enterprise, the big myth, and these books that have been talking about the post World War II shift of the ruling elite to propagandize society back into an understanding that big government is bad and private enterprise is good, and the free market and free market fundamentalism was the ideal. Here, Glander's talking a little bit about it differently and starting a little bit earlier with this idea that many people came to believe that the war, meaning World War One, had been waged primarily for the benefit of rich industrialists and bankers who had profited greatly from it. The notion received its most complete articulation in Engelbrecht and Hanglin's 1934 book, Merchants of Death, in which they argued the U.S. involvement in the war was precipitated to serve the interests of bankers and munitions makers, including the DuPont Company and J.P. Morgan. So a lot of what ends up happening as a response to that is again kind of what Farnsworth and the authors of the Big Myth were talking about in their work, that Glander points out here, that essentially a field of mass communication had to be evolved so that the social sciences could be applied to the study of communication for the purposes of manipulating people and shaping their public opinion in service of and in defense of a ruling elite and their corporate interests. So Glander helps us by talking. He gives us an overview of a lot of the different arguments being made prominently in the early 20th century, talking about, is propaganda good? How should it be used? How should it be defined? Um, and ultimately, so which I think number primarily this is important, certainly for my classes in just really encouraging people to understand and recognize how much time and energy has been spent even before the field was evolved and organized into studying what propaganda is and how it should be used and defined, and ultimately the point being with a goal of manipulating a majority of the people in a society who are not going to benefit from all the wealth produced, all the goods and services produced, who are going to need to be again manipulated uh, in service of the class and racial interests of a ruling elite. Harold Laswell discriminated propaganda from other forms of social control, stipulating that propaganda is concerned exclusively with the manipulation of symbols. Propaganda refers solely to the control of public opinion by significant symbols, or to speak more concretely and less accurately, by stories, rumors, reports, pictures, and other forms of social communication, he wrote in 1927. Propaganda is concerned with the management of opinions and attitudes by the direct manipulation of social suggestion rather than by altering other conditions in the environment or in the organism. And I think actually I should have highlighted, I mean, that's, well, I'm pointing myself to read it, but this is exactly, this is really what I keep saying all the time in my own way. This is a lot of where I'm getting it. Like, they're not going to change the conditions. We're not redistributing wealth. We're not ending the colonization. We're not ending the racism. We're not ending the patriarchy. We're not ending the exploitation. We're not doing none of that. What we will do is manipulate and manage the public opinions through a manipulation of symbols, suggestion, rumors, but rather than anything other than altering the conditions in the environment or in the organism. With the idea, of course, that your attitudes preclude your actions. And it's interesting when, and sort of foreshadowing, not specifically this point, but the discussion later with about Professor Dave and the science communication is that science apparently has demonstrated that the choices we make, the decisions we make, the actions we take have already been predetermined biologically, chemically, before we act, before we say something or think to say something or move to do something. Our our biological processes have already triggered that domino effect that we are sort of the last ones to consciously be aware of in the performance of that action. So if there's a parallel here, it is that the actions we consciously engage are themselves the result of often unknown, unconsciously delivered manipulations of attitudes, suggestions, public opinion, etc. It's the inception effect of sorts. Glander talks more again about the function of news and education to be essentially components of manipulation and propaganda. Um, the use of advertising. And here's where he's talking about this issue of the individual. Technology and an antiquated notion of individualism had been put in the service of these pecuniary interests, resulting in a social order that was attuned to meeting genuine human needs. The older notion of the rugged pioneering individual was now grafted onto the ideology of corporate capitalism, the activities of which, mass production and mass consumption, essentially contradicted the full development of the individual. The individual is now submerged or lost to techniques promoting an external conformity, despite the fact that most Americans continue to express faith in the creed of individualism, and despite the fact that development of scientific technique, the fact that the development of scientific technique had the potential to serve an emancipatory role. The problem of constructing a new individuality consonant with the objective conditions under which we live is the deepest problem of our times, Dewey wrote. In other words, as I interpret it, we want to promote this place as being about rugged individualism, but that's to manipulate you so you don't see the collectivist, the imposed collectivist ideals. That is collectivist in this sense that you will be collectively exploited and be happy about it and be praising the individual capitalists who do it. Which is why to this day we see people telling us you should praise those billionaires that you see. They've invented themselves and their own wealth. They're self constructs of brilliance and genius and leadership. When in reality, as he talk about here, whether it's Walter Lippmann, whether it's Edward Bernays, whether it's Harold Laswell, or this character Biddle, William Biddle, uh, a Case Western Reserve University professor. The real issue is that the rugged individualism of the American is itself a mirage meant to hide the fact that those who rule are an invisible government. A society continues to exist by allowing skillful and wealthy minorities to regiment and manipulate the majority by a sort of invisible government, wrote Biddle. Is obviously not the ideal society from the viewpoint of such a democracy. A majority manipulated into increasing gullibility is not living to the full. So, whether you are fully in agreement with it or a critic of it, the recognition that people's attitudes are manipulated by the invisible government. Bernays wrote of the invisible government in his 1920 book Propaganda as a beautiful thing. Lippmann came back in 1922 with Public Opinion and basically said the same thing. We need an invisible government to manipulate the public opinion of the masses, with them thinking that they are individual and rugged. They're already talking about the consolidation of newspapers and media outlets in the 1930s, that is Biddle and others, and recognizing the ease with which a ruling elite could manipulate. I made a note here about the internet, which would just make all of this much easier eventually. Shout out to my man Chris Simpson, who's referenced here. They developed in 1937 at Columbia University the Institute for Propaganda Analysis. Propaganda is the expression of opinion or action by individuals or groups deliberately designed to influence opinions or actions of other individuals or groups with reference to predetermined ends. Uh, yeah, this is back with more. This is again in talking about the struggle between promoting individualism, promoting free will and democracy, and the like. It runs into a problem that Laswell and others sought to address. The bonds of personal loyalty and affection which bound a man to his chief have long since dissolved. Monarchy and class privilege have gone the way of all flesh, and the idolatry of the individual passes for the official religion of democracy. It is an atomized world in which an individual whims have wider play than ever before and requires more strenuous exertions to coordinate and unify than formerly. The new antidote to willfulness is propaganda. If the mass will be free of chains of iron, it must accept its chains of silver. If it will not love, honor, and obey, it must not expect to escape seduction. It's slickly written. Oh, but you all want to be individuals in your little democracy? Word, I got something for you. And it's propaganda. And if you think you're going to be free from your chains of iron, you're going to get chains of silver and you're going to love it. And we're going to make you want it and love it and be happy to wrap yourselves in chains of silver. Because you could talk about you not going to love and obey your master, but you will be seduced. You will be seduced. Laswell's 1927 text was representative of those works in which it was difficult to determine whether the author was pursuing a study of propaganda techniques in order to decipher it or in order to learn how to use it effectively. And that's exactly, I love that he wrote that, Glander, because when I was in grad school and first reading Laswell, I kept thinking the same thing, Laswell and others. Are you being critical of this? Because I'm reading it and saying, like, yo, you're exposing the problem. But my professors and some of my classmates were all saying, no, 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 he's being critical of it. I'm like, I don't know. Later here, Glander comes out and clarifies for us that Laswell was and Walter Lippmann and others that were presented sometimes in grad school as being kind of, hey, we just being here. No, 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 no. They wanted this. They wanted an organized manipulation by, as Bernays says here, again, this invisible government. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. And then look here how Foster Dulles loved oh, he hated. So that's the point. That's the point. So Foster Dulles says Laswell's study was Machiavellian and should be destroyed. Now, John and Foster Dulles, these are the diabolical brothers who helped construct the intelligence community, the very WASP-driven intelligence community, who have been behind and destabilized almost every socialist and democratic government uh, uh, that they experienced. And whatever they came across one, they destroyed it. And that's why I'm saying Dulles, even though Laswell is actually on Dulles' team, Dulles is saying, get rid of this book. He's snitching. He's telling us, on us. Because when I'm reading Laswell, I'm saying he's telling on you. Oh man! So they talk a little bit more about how propaganda had to be reduced to euphemism in public relations and mass communication and public opinion. The development of a rational technique of social control as are today being contemplated will require the most effective utilization of the newspaper and all other instruments of public opinion. They were clear. Caitlin, that's the dude I was trying to remember earlier. Caitlin, of course, was not the first person to argue for the development of a public political science that would concentrate on the construction of effective propaganda techniques in the interest of controlling public opinion. 14 years earlier, Walter Lippmann, who did not share Caitlin's compunction for precluding the democratic state from engaging in propaganda, had argued vigorously for a political science that would master the techniques by which the opinions of mass society could be regulated. Again, the ruling elite, these elite white men, were very clear. The impact there were very clear of their ability to manipulate the public opinion of the masses. There was some disagreement as whether the government should do it, whether other forms should take hold, what was but all of them understood that it could be done, was being done, and then it was just it just depended on in what form and to what levels of severity each one of them thought it was necessary to engage. But essentially, Walter Lippmann, who became one of the dominant thinkers of the time, as is written here he says here, Lippmann proposed remedy, said that there should be a central agency, an independent expert organization for making the unseen facts intelligible to those who have to make the decisions. As well, this I've quoted in my own dissertation, as well as organizing public opinion for the press. Walter Lippmann, this legendary journalist, was saying that we have to have a central agency that's going to teach those who make the decisions what decisions they need to make, and that will give the press its opinion. So they were saying we need a field of mass communication. We need an organized study and production of opinion manipulating and organizing abilities. And then hence comes the field of mass communications research. Yeah. So again, my point being that as Glander is saying, how I interpret what Glander is saying here and throughout the book is that there was this fear among the ruling elite that more Luigis of the world would emerge, that more people, white people, starting with the whites, that there would be more whites and immigrant Europeans who would not fall in line with this evolving construct of US-led dominance, global dominance, settler colonialism at home, imperialism abroad, et cetera, and so forth. Like they were like, we need to shape the public opinion so folks don't start coming after us. Because as they said, we're not changing anything within this organism. So all we're going to do is manipulate the messages and the symbols and keep everybody in line. So, all right. And this book is Timothy Glander's Origins of Mass Communication Research During the American Cold War. It's a fantastic, fantastic book. And essential for any of us in the field of mass comm or in sociology, I would argue, and anyone just interested in understanding the history of U.S. involvement in the study of propaganda and manipulation of public opinion. And it was all, I think he does a great job of contextualizing it in this setting of a ruling elite that was initially not sure it was going to secure itself going forward, and was like, we can't leave this to chance. All right, where are we? Halfway there. I got to get 5 more super chats if you want an on-screen demonstration of my classic smoked UncleNearest Old Fashioned. All the money raised again during this live super chat, live super chats will go to the Jericho movement for political prisoners. So we're halfway there, and thanks to everybody who has participated so far. All right. Let's see. In fact, let's see. All. Let me see here. We got, thank you, Chitty Matcha. In research on propaganda, do you notice the Rockefeller name come up often, even if just in passing? I find it comes up a lot. And yes, Rockefeller comes up in this book here too. The Rockefeller Foundation was everywhere. Orasami Burton's book. This is again why I think Tip of the Spear is my favorite book on the history of communication studies. He talks about it, but absolutely. So yeah, the Rockefellers are the Rockefeller Foundation comes up often in comm studies. If you can watch a Black Joy Paradox Pillboy, okay. Thank you for your membership. I don't think I know that one. I have to go back and look for that. Random Thought. I think I got this one already, but thank you very much. Doc Jab, does something happen to your interview? Yeah, right, with contextualizing Angela Davis. Yeah, thank you. I think I did get that one. All right, let's see. ZZ Lion, Old Fashioned. Let's go. Thank you. Kenyatta, thank you for the super chat. Let's go. What's the count? 2 more. I just need 2 more. Drums of Liberation. Thank you very much. 2 more, and we're gonna make this. I'm telling you, it's legendary too. All right, so, and again, all this the money that we raise here tonight is going to the Jericho movement. So it's the debauchery ends at the drink being made if we get there. All right, let's see what was next. What was next? So I'll make sure all the links end up in the super chat. I don't know how much of this. I only clipped. I don't think I'm going to play much of this, but
went back maybe the European development.
It was a disturbing discussion about Bitcoin in Africa, and it was really even useless from. Oh, we made the goal. Did we make it? No, we didn't make it. I thought I just saw that we made it, the goal. But the discussion was just yeah, we did make it. Thank you very much. We made the goal, everybody. Let me just wrap up this point, and then I'll get to the drink. But thank you all very much. Please continue. Feel free to continue to send more, because again, all the money is going to the Jericho movement. And when I finish this point, we'll take a quick break. I will go get. Thank you, Manny. I got it. We're gonna get there, and I will get the one important ingredient that most and many even bartenders don't get this right. I'm gonna show. I gotta go, but I couldn't have it ready because you'll see it'll be explained in just a moment. So I just want to just quickly this. I'll put the link in the show description if anybody wanted to watch the whole thing. It is horrible, and it's about how Bitcoin is basically supposed to solve all the problems on the continent of Africa, and every form of the mythology is madness. And I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a little bit more of how the argument is made in a different context in just a moment. We're going to, but let me just play this one. I think I got it cued properly. This one, because one thing was said in here that I thought I was like, okay, we can there's some value here. Let me see if I got it.
Bank. And, it might come as a surprise to you, but they're not all big fans of Bitcoin. And so even though we came out and showed power,
Hold on,
who can pay for it. So if I'm a poor rural African, how am I going to pay enough money to pay back a $2 million investment in energy? It just takes too long, right? And so I can buy an LED light bulb or I can charge my phone, sure, but that doesn't use very much power. And so if I'm an energy investor, I basically enter this willful delusion with the energy developer that will someday in 30 years get paid back on this energy. But that just doesn't happen. It never has, right? So along comes Bitcoin mining and says, oh, by the way, we can make this profitable for you now. Yeah. And it does. And it's like this magical thing. But here's the crazy bit. Who's actually financing these things to date? It's concessionary financiers. So this is your, Rockefeller Foundations. It's your USAIDs.
Okay.
It's all these African Development Bank, maybe the European Development Bank. And, it might come as a surprise to you, but they're not all big fans of Bitcoin.
Message.
That was it. So he's on the one hand talking about how Bitcoin mining is going to solve all these issues of energy and space and all. It's so bizarre. And he even uses the word he's heard magical. It's not magical. There is no magical solution to colonial exploitation on the continent. But my point, what I thought was interesting is that he's saying, even though they're not fans of Bitcoin, it's the Rockefellers, it's USAID, CIA, it's Africa Development Bank. It's all these elite entities that are buying and in because they see the hustle. So the idea that poor Africans anywhere in the diaspora are going to be able to use this to get themselves free is bizarre. The argument is so upside down and backwards. But all right, I'm going to come back with a little bit more on that. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to go get this one bit of ingredient, and then we can come back and I will celebrate. Thank you all very much. This is great. That we made our goal, our challenge of 10 super chats, all the money going to the Jericho movement, and I will now demonstrate my legendary UncleNearest smoked old fashioned. So I just need to pull this up. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Taking a quick break right here at I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Keep me right there, everybody, wait a minute. All right, everybody, welcome back. Sunshine. All right. So first of all, this is what I had to go get. Then we'll come back to this crypto. You got to get the single rounded ice cube. This is an important feature that real bartenders know you have to have. All right. The one singularly round ice cube, okay? Very important. Don't underestimate the style and the effectiveness of it. All right. Got your trusty UncleNearest. Not advocating, gotta be careful. And somebody just said, no, I'm not purchasing Beyonce's drink because it's not even really Black owned. She's just a front person. So you get, however, couple fingers of. Then you need simple syrup, but the simple syrup can't be some store-bought nonsense. It's got to be homemade and made with real pure honey. Now, super vegans will get mad at me because technically this makes me this is not vegan. Honey is not vegan, but it's the one exception I will make. And I just make it a little bit of simple syrup on my own, some pure natural honey and water. So you don't have to get a whole bunch of unhealthy sugars, more at least in your drink. And if you get about, I eyeball it, but it's about half of the amount, really a quarter to a half of however much liquor you put in. Then you get your bitters, couple drops of the bitters. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. And then we had to have another discussion of how this got made, because this might be too much for the novices. But as I said, this is my version of the smoke. You got to have a little bit of your tincture. Little bit of your tincture. Also homemade, by the way. Yes. Yes. And then, of course, it's not just the garnish. Let me get a better. Can I get a better cut? All right, so I got 2. It's not just the garnish, but you need a little bit of orange peels. Couple orange peels. All right. We're not quite done. Because even though this is my version of smoked, we're doing this for real. We're going to have, let's see, some apple cedar chips. A couple apple cedar chips. We're going to put into the cocktail smoker. I should have used the scooper that they provide, so you don't make as much of a mess. And then let's get this bad boy. Up here. Yes. Now, I should have had the butane torch, which might mess this up, but I didn't have any butane. So let's get this thing lit. Couple seconds. Yes, this bad boy right here about to be nice. Cover it up for a second. Yeah, I might have needed the blowtorch. It's not going to quite. Let's see if we get there. It's getting there slowly but surely. But yeah, I think I did need that. So it's not quite getting there. Because of course, normally this would all fill up with smoke. But I'm not quite getting it. So it's going to be the original smoked. It's going to be the original smoke, but not the full smoke. Actually, let me just give it a couple seconds. Maybe it's going to be a little slower. And then I'll come back. Let me cover it up here. Let me come back to that in a second. No, I can't. I don't smoke them. It's been a long, long time. All right. So I didn't quite get it because of the butane. You need that butane. But oh man, this is about to be noise. Get the nice little stir. Get the nice little stir. Delicious. Delicious. Salute. Oh, when I get that butane and that smoker thing together, that's going to be even better. But that is delicious. So I don't advocate any of this really. And the new report about the carcinogenic nature of alcohol is serious. But so I've partially why I decided to do this is because if I am going to indulge, it's got to be done right. You can't be taking these risks for some nonsense. So now the contradiction, for more of the contradiction of UncleNearest and Fawn Weaver, the owner, you got to check Saturdays with Renee from yesterday, or from earlier today. We recorded it yesterday, but from this morning, in our discussion with Brokish. So, but the most important thing about all of this is that this is all happening as a result of we hitting our goal. And you all coming through with the 10 goal super chat, all of which is going to the Jericho movement. So thank you all very much, and feel free to send some more because everything that comes in tonight is going there. And well, the smoke in this case isn't really going to be carcinogenic because you're not inhaling it. You're not, when you smoke the drink, you're not inhaling any of it, and it's the tincture I added isn't smoked at all, so you don't have to worry about that. And the smoking from the smoker just creates a smoke and it adds to a taste. It's not so. But all right, now the second half of this, what I did want, because this part of this discussion of crypto and Bitcoin, an article was sent to me. If you remember a little while ago, Brother Wong Omawale put me in touch with a sister who is doing work on the continent and around Togo in particular. And I acknowledged during our discussion that one area of our disagreement would be around Bitcoin. She has recently published something. Where is it? Oh, you got to be kidding. Oh, here it is. I was about to say that I think exemplifies, shows where that disagreement, plays out, and I think exemplifies some of the problems that play out in that discussion that I just showed you that clip from, about the value of Bitcoin in the continent of Africa. So if you remember, I forgot a couple weeks ago, this sister here, Farida Naburema, came on the show to talk about her work in Congo. And she's just written a piece at the end of last year on her Medium blog, Why the Left Can't Ignore Bitcoin, from Skepticism to Embracing a Tool for Change. And she starts off here, throughout my life as an activist, I champion the core principles of leftist ideology: freedom from oppression, justice as a tool to dismantle inequality, equality as the foundation of true democracy, and dignity for every individual as a non-negotiable human right. These principles have guided my work against authoritarianism, neocolonialism, neoliberalism, and economic exploitation. The orange and the honey. I'm telling you, this right here, I'm telling you. Anyway. In recent years, Bitcoin has attracted growing support from far-right groups and advocates of Western supremacy. And again, I love how, so she starts off by saying, look, I'm a leftist, and I want to help the left get over its problems with Bitcoin. And then she starts off by saying, hey, I know Bitcoin has attracted all these far-right groups, but this part gets glossed over in the same way people will often gloss over in discussions. They'll say, yeah, I know there's capitalism and white supremacy, but without really discussing or considering, well, what does it mean to be in a capitalist white supremacy colonial, So she just kind of says, yeah. It's some Western supremacists and far-right groups, but she doesn't really go into who they are, why they would have constructed. So you have to see that video. Please watch the interview I did recently with the author of The Politics of Bitcoin. Where I discussed, first of all, the Let Them Eat Crypto, Pete Howson, and then the discussion of the book, The Politics of Bitcoin. I'll put the links to both of those, because those two videos get into a lot of who, and the Barrett Brown interviews, who these right-wing people are, who Peter Thiel and the them types, like who are these folks and why they're so okay, so she just kind of glosses over that to get to the point about what I think is really become a feature of the differences in enslavement and colonization that play out in the diaspora. And it really does follow along the lines that we often would get in our basic overview summaries of the diaspora problems or differences in Africana studies, that on the continent of Africa, as Farida talks about here, the state is blamed for everything as the corrupt, ignoble entity that exploits the people. Whereas in the United States, the state, at least for a time, had been traditionally seen as the font, the saving grace of the Black movement. That is, federal involvement had to be declared if Black people in this country were going to be seen as advancing. Whereas on the continent, the federal government was seen as the cause of the inequality. So private enterprise throughout the continent has often taken on a different connotation than it does historically here in the US, although Black capitalist efforts have started to work against that, have been working against that as well. So here she says that the concept of liberty has consistently been usurped by the state, whereas what she ends up advocating here is that the concept of liberty should be delivered upon us by private enterprise and personal ownership of a currency. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think she does well here to make the argument. She outlines an argument, but doesn't do anything to demonstrate how her argument is correct. So again, I'll link it here, encourage you to read it, and you could judge for yourself. But essentially, she's arguing that Bitcoin solves the problems facing the continent. In recent years, Bitcoin has been promoted by groups whose political agendas clash with leftist values. Its energy consumption is misunderstood, and its price appreciation is often dismissed as speculative tool for the wealthy West. Yet these perceptions overlook a deeper truth. Bitcoin is a neutral, decentralized technology that aligns with the same struggles for justice and equality that leftists have championed for decades. That's fundamentally incorrect. Bitcoin is not neutral. It's not decentralized. It doesn't align with justice and equality. It is a centralized, non-neutral asset that benefits those who own it and benefits those who own the very centralized exchanges and the very centralized accumulation of the Bitcoin itself, of the mining operations themselves, and so on and so on, and all to the benefit of the handful of often extremely right-wing white owners of all of it. So when she goes through all this about the hedge against inflation, uh, fighting debt, ending predatory remittances, empowering the excluded, combating illicit financial flights, and advancing transparency, protecting the working class and retirees. I mean, it's just all of these things, all of these problems she claims are addressed by crypto and Bitcoin, and doesn't offer up any evidence. It's just more of the promotional talking points that don't really mean anything. And I think that she has it entirely wrong, unfortunately. Uh, but again, I'll link it. You can read it on your own to see if I've misinterpreted or missed anything. But essentially, she's again just following all of the mythologies around not just Bitcoin or crypto, but any investment tool or capitalist enterprise that would be used to claim, or that would attach itself to a claim of advancing the causes of liberation. And as I just played for you with that talking about the mining operations, the Bitcoin mining operations, it's all USAID and African Development Bank. So what is this idea that poor Africans are going anywhere in the diaspora are going to make some sort of investment and catch up? It just doesn't. Ultimately, her argument avoids what, as all of them do, avoids my own particular concern, and I think with that of most of us, which is investment in Bitcoin or crypto or blockchain doesn't do anything to address political power, policy over redistribution. It just makes us promise that we would all be included in the pursuit of individual wealth. And again, going back to the first part about Timothy Glander's book, the individual is mythology. So the idea that you can personally advance your financial condition, or in small groups advance your financial condition as small groups or individuals, is part of the mythology that's concocted, uh, focused largely here in the United States, but is clearly operating throughout. That the individual pursuit of advance is on the one hand possible, but also meant to reflect what could potentially happen for the collective, when in reality, as Laswell and Bernays and others were saying, the pursuit of individualism is a mirage. There is no individual nothing. You all will be collectively oppressed, and we're not changing nothing about the conditions, only the messaging and the narrative. Yeah, I'm gonna skip some of that and just get to let's just get to the fun part. I did want to just, did you all see this story? We don't have to take too much time with it, but I'm probably very late to this, but this Egyptian Palestinian actor, Kalamwi, got removed from Gladiator 2 because of her pro-Palestinian position, politics. Uh, and the actress essentially just got removed from, like, all of her scenes got cut, is basically the story here. She was widely praised for her breakout role in Marvel's Moon Knight, and was a welcomed addition to Gladiator 2. Reports described her character as integral to the story, leading many to question why her role was effectively erased in the film. Uh, she posted here, I'm glad that this what's his name, Pedro Pascal posted these, because every other actor in the movie has been pretending for the whole press run that there wasn't another cast member who was supposed to have a main role but had all her scenes cut from the movie. Like, all they pretending she doesn't exist. So they were happy to see that he posted these pictures of her being there, because her roles were removed. Her role was removed from the film, from the final cut of the film, because she posted some pro-Palestinian stuff. So I just thought that was wild. And then there was this other story that a number of you sent with what's her name from Homeland, admitting that they were all on set in the film and on the TV show with the CIA and the Defense Department were all, writing the scripts, and over this many seasons run. And she even says at one point during this interview that they had to work with many different intelligence agencies and agents over the years, because the politics of the country and the world shifted over the many years run of this show Homeland. And and then I even just saw one where they talked about the making of the Red October, the Hunt for Red October. And the same thing was done there, where Alec Baldwin talked about being brought into the, I guess, Pentagon or other, to meet with CIA agents and get top secret. Not he didn't get top secret. He wasn't. Made. They didn't reveal anything to him, but he was in spaces where top secret level clearance people would meet and talk, and so he could get an idea of how it all played out. And what's her name here is saying the same thing, basically, about how Homeland worked, and up until the point where something actually had to be conveyed of top secret nature, they would be in the room watching people, do their thing and getting advice on how to. But again, going back to Glander, and even where they were openly discussing every mechanism of communication and media must be deployed for the purposes of propaganda and managing public opinion. So of course they're going to do that through popular shows like Homeland, or the removal of a character from a film if she could be connected to some antithetical politics like supporting Palestinians. So, all right, but let's as I start to head towards an eventual close, I do want to. I'll come back to some Q&A. We gotta look at least some of this here. So if you all remember, a few weeks ago, I talked a little bit. You've all probably seen it also. LordJamar, for some of us, we remember him as a legendary member, or a member of the legendary Brand Nubians. At one point in my youth, I thought he was an elevated thinker. And he came back recently to do the whole parroting of Flat Earth. And as I played for you in a couple weeks ago, he said in his defense of the Flat Earth logic, you have to believe, you cannot believe in a round earth if you believe in the Bible. So he connected his belief in religion to Flat Earth. I don't know if you all are familiar with, he's a multi-million subscriber YouTuber, Professor Dave of Professor Dave Explains, who calls himself a science communicator. That's a phrase I actually like. And I've even thought of adopting that. Like, I'm not really, like he'll say, I'm not really a scientist. I study science. I've taught science. I understand science, but I don't do science. I'm a science communicator. And I was thinking maybe I should adopt that too in terms of communication and Africana studies. I'm not the most prolific scholar, so maybe instead of promoting myself as a communications or Africana studies scholar per se, although I'm credentialed and done some of the work, et cetera, and so forth, maybe it's better to say I'm the communication and media communicator. I'm an Africana studies and communication studies communicator. But Professor Dave become very popular in debating these flat earthers and other science deniers. And I actually think he does important work in defending science. And he can become very aggressive, as you'll see in this exchange, at least a little bit. We're not going to play the whole thing, but I'll play it from the beginning so you can see him set up the whole thing. And then I'll put the link in the show description. But again, my point is what is, aside from the fun of it, because obviously the flat earth logic and all of that is itself, much like these narratives around Bitcoin, is attached to a very right-wing, conservative, white supremacist colonial ideology and politics. It's all wrapped up in conservative, Christianity and white supremacy and all kinds of nonsense and backwards thinking, often pro-capitalist and Western imperial and all of that. Much like the Bitcoin and crypto, that's the logic behind all of it, even as it presents itself to some as a liberating message. The them who are convincing you that the earth is round, they're part of the enemy. They're the, and the free thinking people know that the science community they're the ones bought off and, promoting this false consciousness to defend the overlords, all this other kind of stuff but not recognizing that they're defending under the guise of liberation some very backwards politics. So I think what Dave does is actually pretty important. It's also fun to watch, and it's also educational for those of us who are never science, proficient. And, so, all right. So let's check this out. This just dropped.
Hey everyone, many of you saw my recent reaction video where I drank whiskey while laughing at a rapping flat earther named LordJamar, who was proudly demonstrating his unparalleled stupidity on the podcast of a comedian named Godfrey. Well, that reaction video set off a chain of events that I'm very excited to share with you today, so grab some popcorn and enjoy. If you recall, Godfrey was the host, LordJamar was a guest, and then there was this third fellow. His name is Dante Nero, and after I posted my reaction video, he reached out to me by email. He told me that he's a big fan of the channel, and that the episode I reacted to was frustrating for him because he knew that Jamar had no idea what he was talking about, but he didn't have the tools necessary to combat his script in real time. He expressed interest in having me on Godfrey's show via Zoom to have a conversation with LordJamar.
Shout out to Nero too, because if you see the original, you could see he didn't like what was going on, but just didn't, and I'm glad he did this and put this together, and you can see him become a little more vocal in this whole thing. Again, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but you can.
Now, upon hearing this request, I was immediately aware that if I agreed to do that, it would be a total shit show. I am intimately familiar with people like LordJamar. He's a delusional narcissist and complete douchebag whose entire identity revolves around his perceived intellectual superiority over the rest of humanity, despite being a willfully ignorant, clueless asshat. Basically, he's a flat earther. He is 100% impervious to even the most basic facts and logic, and he will not listen to a word I have to say, no matter how obviously correct I am. But when has that ever stopped me before? So I agreed to go on the show. Now, I will say that I went into this with the intention of remaining relatively cordial as long as possible, but Jamar began insulting me before I was even introduced, so I decided to just lace into him from the first moment. Even though my volume was dramatically lower than theirs, even though he was talking over me constantly, even though there was barely any attempt by Godfrey to moderate him so that I could get equal speaking time, I still took a big steamy dump all over him and made him look dumber than rocks in front of his own audience. So much so, in fact, that after less than 20 minutes of interacting, Jamar threatened to leave the studio if I wasn't cut out of the feed. And then, mere minutes after the live stream was posted to Godfrey's channel, it was pulled. Undoubtedly because Jamar told Godfrey to pull it, since he knew how unbelievably stupid he looked. But, my friends, you'd better believe I anticipated exactly this, so I recorded the Zoom session from my end. I knew that this exchange was going to be absolute gold, and I was not disappointed. With that context covered, enjoy this brief interaction with one of the dumbest people alive.
There's not fire in a vacuum of space.
I want to say something.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
It's ridiculous.
Like, before we bring Professor Dave, here's my thing.
Man,
let me
fuck Professor Dave.
Go ahead.
Before he even get here.
Here's
You know why?
when it comes to hip hop.
See, that's wild though. So that's wild. So Dave is right. Before he's even there, dude is already saying fuck dude. And then he's just wildly wrong throughout the whole the whole thing. But this speaks to, again, to my point about we are in a crisis levels of methodology, civilizational crisis of methodology, where someone who studies something, and Nero tries to point this out, I think later on in the podcast, dude he even tries to say, wouldn't it make sense? He says to Jamar later on, Jamar, if I'm trying to do something on the history of hip hop, don't you think it makes sense that I would give someone like you more room or more credence in their argument, given your legendary relationship and history with hip hop? So shouldn't we feel that kind of way when talking to a scientist about science? And Jamar's like, nah, fuck that dude. Da, 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 da. And it's like, so methodologically, how are we supposed to get anywhere? Anyway.
Right? There's questions I have to ask because he spent his life studying being part of hip hop. To take the people that are spending
he's doing
their
it
lifetime,
now. My bad. He's doing it now.
understanding
My fault.
physics,
Oh my
science,
gosh.
all kinds of
That
things.
don't matter.
It is absurd.
He's
It
saying
would
that
be
don't matter.
It would be the equivalency if I took
Oh,
an
my
internet
God.
dude.
That does not
and
matter.
let me finish. If I took an internet dude who got a couple of tracks and asked him about the history of hip hop, it's the same thing.
No, it's not.
It's one
No, it's
person.
not.
He said
what
it's not the
about-
same thing.
You say scientists, right, that have been studying for a long time. But there are people who've been in these professions that have there to lie, just like medical apartheid against African Americans. There
Yeah,
are
but
trained doctors
When you
that
follow
have lied
the money,
to black people about health.
they're
Yeah,
gonna
but
say
but
whatever
how
the
did
money tells them to
nobody
say.
is saying that didn't
Nobody,
happen.
no scientist is
And again, it's been a while. I didn't read her entire book. I saw and met Harriet Washington once at a lecture. I don't remember. Has Harriet Washington ever argued that in her book, Medical Apartheid, or in her presentations about that book, has she ever argued that the entire medical industry or community should be ignored? Harriet, should be ignored. Did she ever argue that all doctors are complicit and that no black people should see the I don't remember that being part of her argument. So people do the most with stretching some of these arguments or works or studies. Anyway.
getting
saying that didn't
funded if they do not say what the money wants them to say, sir.
Okay, that's
so
conspiracy.
science. No, it's
That's
not.
not
It's
fact.
real.
Yeah,
It's
every-
a fucking fact.
But you don't get to say
Science
that
is a
everything
religion
is that
now.
way. You don't get to
Science
say
is
that.
a religion. It is not,
Science is not
what
a
you
religion.
think it is.
That's
Oh, yes, it is.
That's
And
absurd.
and
This is
people
great.
Science
worship
as a
at the
religion is
altar of
ridiculous.
science.
Nobody's
And these
worship at the
people are your
altar.
new fucking deacons and bishops, and you believe that they have the power.
Let's
They're
go.
closer to
Let's
God
go.
than anybody.
So at some point, Dave will make the point in this video that LordJamar is just regurgitating the talking points of a popular flat earther. And in watching all these atheist debates that I've been over the last year or two, this is one of the talking points that you find is sort of a trope in that community, that science is a religion, that faith is required in science in the same way faith operates in the religious community, which is absurd. And then they say that, as they do here, you get mad at me for worshiping at the altar of Jesus. Well, you worship at the altar of Einstein and Darwin. And it's absurd.
Else. No. hang on a second. My whole disclaimer before we even start this bullshit, okay, is that, hang on, I issued a challenge, Godfrey, to even come here to talk to Mr. Whoever, scientist
Mr.
man,
Whoever, scientist man,
that if he can present me a working model of a ball that water sticks to the outside of
rotating.
it. Yes, as it rotates, I'll gladly sit down and have a talk with him. He hasn't showed me such model.
He ain't even got on the screen
model
yet.
right now.
You told him to go
as
fuck
we
himself.
Sit here.
Oh, is Dave around? Is he there?
He's on.
Can he hear us?
A model right now.
I can hear you guys.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Dave.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Dave. It's Godfrey. How
With
are
a
you? I don't
concave
see
bowl.
you.
Doing good.
You're doing good.
Can you guys see me?
Hey.
What up, Dave?
Dave, are you Dave the scientist?
I'm the one that contacted you, Dave.
Are you Dave the scientist?
Yeah, he's the one
I'm a
that
science
contacted
communicator.
Science communicator. Well, hey, how you doing? First
What
time
does that
meeting
mean?
you.
difference?
I'm
Science
doing good.
communicator.
Science communicator. Okay. Well, here you are. You do not believe in the flat Earth theories, and you are. I've been taught that the Earth has been round for a long time, and when the flat Earth thing came around, I said, okay, what's this about? And then I listened to some of the flat Earth stuff, and you know what? Some of the stuff made sense. I was like, that kind of makes sense. And then, when you hear about what you've always been learning about, well, that kind of makes sense. And then when I talked to, actually, Dave, when I talked to a fighter pilot, and then they go like 50,000 feet, way higher than commercial jet. I say, have you seen curvature? He goes, we see the curvature.
Hold on a second.
A tennis ball.
Yeah.
Let me get to
Okay,
it.
wet a tennis ball.
Yes, wet.
And you can
Let's
rattle off your
do it.
debate talking points.
Do you have a
I'll tell you how
working
you're
model of a ball that has water sticking to the outside of it? Can you show me a
wrong. Okay,
working model
wet
of that?
a tennis ball.
Yes, wet.
It has
And
nothing to
that,
do
but
with
no.
anything.
That's
Like,
not
what
water
do you even-
sticking to
what
a
does that even
ball.
mean?
That's saturation of water on the
Okay,
ball.
so
I
let's
want you
see.
to show me where water sticks to the outside of a ball
Yeah.
as it spins. It doesn't go to the
Okay,
equator of the
so-
ball and
all right,
spin
buddy,
off.
I heard what you said. I
Show
heard
me
what you
a
said.
working
I'm not
model,
gonna talk
sir.
about it.
Hang on.
You said something very
Show
stupid. I'm
me
gonna
a
explain to
working
you how it's
model.
stupid.
Okay.
The reason that things stick to the Earth is because the Earth is extremely massive, so it generates a very large gravitational field. When water falls off of a ball, whatever ball you're talking about, to the Earth, it's because of the large gravitational field exerted by the Earth. So when you're talking about water sticking to a ball, your desired demonstration of gravity fails because gravity exists.
No.
Things fall to the ground.
There is
because of
density
gravity.
and buoyancy, sir. Gravity is not some
Okay,
magical
density is
thing
not
that
a
makes
force.
things
Density is a
drop
scalar.
to the
Density is
ground.
not a force.
It depends
And
the
buoyancy
medium
only
that it is
exists where
in.
gravity
If I
exists.
drop something in this
Hey,
water,
kiddo, shut
depending
up.
on
Hold on,
how
hold on.
heavy
You
it
can't
is,
just-
No,
it's
like
going
you
to
can't do it.
sink
You can't just
Wait,
talk
or
over it.
float.
Wait, I want you all to talk, but
Density
I want to
is
hear
not
both
First
of
of
you.
all, this guy came out real disrespectful, talk about the stupidest shit. Like if he was in
Yeah,
this
it's the
room, I'd be
stupid- Dude,
smacking
you
the
just
shit
said
out
that
of
it
him
doesn't
right
matter
now.
if scientists
First of all,
study science.
Okay.
It's all bullshit. You
Right,
have any idea how
sir?
offensive
You know
what
that,
is,
right?
What you say to the
You know that,
entire
right?
human race, the entire body of scientific knowledge. Let me respond to the insanely stupid thing you said.
I want
Density
you to
and buoyancy,
respond
which you
to my-
memorized from an
let him talk,
RTI video.
Jay.
Okay, we're gonna talk about what
Respond to what you said.
pseudoscience.
You wanna
Okay,
talk
Go ahead.
now?
Okay, go ahead,
You want me to
Dave.
respond?
Go ahead, Dave.
Density
ahead.
is not a force. It requires a force to produce an acceleration. Things accelerate towards the Earth. Density is a scalar. It's not a force. It can't make things move. Buoyancy, there's a buoyant force, but it has gravity in the equation.
It has
Buoyancy only exists
gravity.
when gravity exists.
the secret sauce.
Here's the problem with your
gravity.
density bullshit. You think that things fall down because the air is less dense. The air is less dense above the object too. So why the fuck don't things fall up? Can you
Things
explain
do
that to me?
fall up, you fucking asshole.
They don't
Bubbles,
fall up.
bubbles
Nothing
go up,
falls
you
up.
stupid fuck. Fucking evaporation goes up, you dickhead. Like,
That's
what the
not
fuck are you
falling.
talking about?
That's
Like-
not a. That's because there's
it's
wind.
because it's lighter than the fucking density it's in.
Doesn't
Why?
a bubble-
how can
doesn't
a
a-
fly
doesn't
defy
a bubble
gravity?
fall? Doesn't a-
How can a fucking tadpole defy gravity? You fucking shithead.
Tadpole defy gravity? What the fuck
Yes.
are you talking
How does
about?
anything swim through? If gravity is holding down oceans that are tons of fucking
Yeah.
All right.
You just don't read, beloved.
All right, I'll put the link in the show description if you want to watch the whole thing. It is hilarious. It's disturbing. It's scary, but it is also hilarious. But yeah, and then Nero asks him. He says, but the stuff falls down. So why does it fall down? And they get. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. But the methodology of I don't want to hear from anybody who studies science because they're all bought off, and I'm going to listen to whomever with what evidence, and I'm going to dismiss the entire scientific community is wild. But again, for me, this is the intellectual equivalent to financial literacy. Financial literacy is the economic equivalent to flat earth ideology. The same illogic goes into why can't we Bitcoin our way and buying power our way to freedom? Why can't we entrepreneur our way to freedom like everybody else? And it's because we've been denied what we as John Hope Bryan says, we missed the boat. We didn't get the memo. Or as we talked about this morning on Saturdays with Renee, the brother from Pharos Investment says slavery broke Black people's ability to realize that it could be worse and that we need to work harder. It's the same illogic as that. And it's all similarly dispersed through white supremacist, it's distilled white supremacist colonial logic that is presented as liberation. So, in fact, as I thought I would do this real quick. So I can't even read this whole story because I'm not paying for a subscription, but why brands shouldn't be afraid to advertise to multicultural consumers during the Trump administration. Is saying here the buying power of multicultural groups exceeds $3.2 trillion in 2020, with Hispanics alone accounting for $1.9 trillion. So again, the mythology is spreading around this idea that, and it's saying, why should, advertisers, ad buyers should not be afraid to target world majority people because they have a buying power. And of course, as it's correctly defined in that instance, buying power is described as the ability to enrich those who own the economy. But it's presented often through the LordJamars of the world as a latent economic strength and political power that Black people just refuse to tap themselves into. And I keep saying I'm going to do this, so let me do this now. Just today, I got several of them. This is what my Google buying power alerts look like. And I just want to show you, we don't even have to read the stories. From Newsweek, housing market. How do interest rates affect your buying power? Because it's understood that buying power means your ability to spend in the economy. Are they talking to Black people? No. Are they talking to mostly their white audience? Yes. And they're not promising this as something that's going to liberate them. It's just, hey, this is what you need to know so that your money will go farther in today's market. Constellation Energy, who supplies us, by the way, interesting, Constellation Energy is buying power is buying power, natural gas, and geothermal power. Okay, that didn't even, okay, I see. But again, they're talking, it's not even, Metro moves to amend homeless tax services tax. It would income thresholds rise as the buying power of the dollar wanes. What can the dollar buy? How much is the dollar worth? How much can it buy in the economy? How much can it be used to enrich those who own it? The group has much stronger buying power than any individual resident or business has with dealing with the utility distributing the electric supply. Again, whoever this group is. Weymouth, Macy's buying power, their buying power. Workers are regaining some of the buying power they lost with inflation. So, but again, is anyone arguing that working people, that the labor force, that the working world can free itself by galvanizing its buying power and investing in so is the solution to labor inequality poor people, labor organizing themselves and buying businesses, starting businesses? Senior citizens, Social Security, their buying power, they've lost 30% of their buying power since 2000, apparently. Buying power of Stillman's, again, a corporation. Again, my point is just to show that for everybody but Black people, buying power is just a reflection of how much you can spend and how much you could get with your money in the market, in the economy. Only when it's targeted to Black people does it become something about, hey, you can liberate yourself with this. You could free yourself with this. Oh, damn. There was, you know what? Something I do want to show you this. Let me show you. Let's take 10 minutes. Let's take 10 minutes of something. I did want to show you. So I talk a lot about these atheist debates. I want to show you 10 minutes, the 5-minute. We're in the middle of the debate, 5 minutes from each side. GRLAHebrew versus Dr. RichardCarrier on the question of the historicity of Jesus. And I only want to, this isn't so much to do a sort of, this is as bad as LordJamar, but I do want to show you what I think is fascinating about some of the methodology and the argumentation that is involved in some of these and some of the argumentation styles that I think this 10-minute clip demonstrates. So we're going to take 10 minutes and watch the 5 minutes on each side of this. I did want to do that. And I had meant to connect that with the Dave Jamar thing before getting into the buying power stuff. And then we could talk a little bit. And then maybe I'll just do some Q&A after that and see if you all have some comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony. So if you do start to reorganize, I'll start to go through the chat and find them as we watch this 10-minute exchange. Yeah. Let's just do that. Let's do that. Did Jesus exist? RichardCarrier versus GRLAHebrew, who is a Hebrew Israelite, and not bad at debate, but
yours, GRLAHebrew.
All right, again, first and foremost, I give all praises, honor, and glory to you. How about Shem Shai? So, one major thing I want to point out is how dishonest it is, and I'm not saying this personally.
Is that coming across distorted?
Dr. RichardCarrier, but just in general, for scholars to.
Let me try to restart that.
Yours, GRLAHebrew.
All right, again, first and foremost, I give all praises, honor, and glory to you. How about Shem Shai? So, one major thing I want to point out is
why is
how
this coming across like
dishonest it is, and I'm not saying this personally on the behalf of Dr. RichardCarrier, but just in general, for scholars to dismiss the evidence that exists or the lack thereof that exists in Palestine or Judea during the time contemporary with when Christ is purported to walk the earth.
So wait a minute, let me just pause. Are you all here? It sounds fine to you all? Okay, is it just me? Okay. All right, cool. My bad. All right, here we go.
And what I mean by that is, of course, we all know the saying, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. We're talking about somebody who lived in the 1st century in Judea. So that's a long time ago, right? Not many things are preserved, especially when we're dealing with writings from all over the entire planet, from anywhere at that time, let alone a place that was sacked and destroyed by the Romans in the Roman Jewish wars. Then had another Rose Jr. War. Then you had the Bar Kokhba revolt. You had various things that totally devastated the area. So and on top of that, the average person, especially peasant, which of course Jesus is purported to be, had no impact, and there's no evidence that they exist. They didn't leave any evidence behind that they ever existed. The average person who lived at that time, let alone from that region. Those are things that have to be understood. To act as if such things should exist is really kind of insane, right? On top of that, he attacked and built a straw man for my argumentation for bringing the Jewish sources, right? Again, I mentioned Maimonides, or however you say his name, who existed much later in time, of course, than Jesus. The point was the Jewish rabbinical tradition did not assert or affirm that Jesus Christ did not exist. They engaged him as if he was an actual historical figure. So we have to take things into consideration. The number one opponents of Christianity from its onset were the rabbinical Jews. They are the ones who had a problem with many Jews going and doing something that they felt was against the Torah, was idolatrous. If the man never existed, then the individuals who would have firsthand knowledge would have made that a primary argument against his followers. And because of how we know the way in which and the gravity in which rabbinical tradition is taken, we know that that's something that would have been passed down along with all the other traditions of rabbinical Judaism, right? Now, I want to go back to my slides, right? So he's making quite the assertion about Tacitus' knowledge of Jesus. We just heard him do that. And we have strong historical evidence that contradicts what he says, right? So I'm going to go here, right? This is also from the Annals of Tacitus. He says this: I remember hearing my elder say that a certain document was often seen in Piso's hand, which he never made public. This document, his friends, averred was a dispatch from Tiberius containing instructions with regard to Semanticus. Piso had intended to produce it before the Senate and thereby convict the emperor, but Sejanus put him off with empty promises. It was also said that Piso did not die by his own hand, but by the executioner. I cannot affirm the truth of either story, but I feel sound to not withhold statements made by persons who were still alive in the days of my own youth. Right? So this is important because we see that Tacitus accredits nothing whatsoever beyond the fact that he had heard certain old men tell certain things. He distinctly refuses to accredit anything else. So this is a source where when Tacitus is getting something, hold on, let me go here, my fault. So here we have a clear example of how Tacitus handles hearsay. He affirms that he has no proof beyond what he heard, right? If Dr. Carrier's position were accurate as the Tacitus source for the life and crucifixion, he would have said something similar, but he doesn't. He speaks about it as if he knows it matter-of-factly. Again, he is confronted with things that he hears. Oh, it said this. I heard certain old men say this, but he's not verifying it, or as the other author says, he's not accrediting it because he has no other sources. So he makes sure to mention there is a lack of historical source. In the case of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion under Pontius Pilate, he does no such thing, which means he's speaking matter-of-factly about it. He's speaking as if it is a validated form of history, and he is, of course, a Roman historian. Right? With that, I rest, giving again all praise Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua.
Make sure you guys are subscribed and following the Brother Garfield podcast. We are locked
we're just going to let the
on
Richard
Hebrew
Carrier
versus
response
Dr.
play,
Richard
and
Carrier.
then we'll come back.
Did Jesus exist? We are still in the
But
first
I think this
round.
summarized well
It is on Dr.
Carrier's
Richard
argument
Carrier's 5-minute rebuttal
around
round. I will reset the time. The time is now reset. I will stop sharing
the poor historicity for
Gorilla's
Jesus.
stream. Dr. Richard Carrier, would you like to share a screen for this round?
No, I'll just speak.
All right, good deal. The 5-minute rebuttal will start when you start.
All right. Yeah. So the issue that in this debate is not about just the absence of evidence. That's not what I argued at the beginning. If you remember, it's the sequence of evidence that is indicative, not just the absence of evidence. The evidence starts with Jesus only being met in revelations and mystical experiences in our earliest documents. No mention of him being someone that people met before he died. and he's only learned about through revelation in Scripture. It's only a lifetime later that we get sources talking about him being a historical person, and those sources are in a foreign language, in a foreign land, citing no sources, and we don't know who they are. We don't know where they're getting their information, and the information that they convey is patently mythical. It looks exactly like the mythologies we have of all the other deities and demigods and heroic persons of the time. So that sequence of events looks like someone who doesn't exist. Where if we look at Socrates, we get multiple contemporaries and people who knew him personally, including people who were critics of Socrates. There's even more evidence than this, by the way. There's historians of his own time. Other people mention him, even just casually. So we have a lot of citation to the existence of Socrates. And like I said, it says you can find this in my book on the historicity of Jesus. We have none of that for Jesus. Jesus starts out instead in contemporaries or near contemporaries as a revelatory being, someone people only meet in mystical experiences. It's only decades later, right, that we get the Gospels. And we only get one Gospel, by the way, Mark. And then all the other Gospels are just copying Mark in different ways and adding and embellishing to it. And that looks like similar things that we have for other mythical heroes. Jesus is actually more like Osiris, Hercules, Bacchus, the ones that I mentioned earlier. He looks like one of these savior figures, these savior heroes that people put their faith in and try to obtain immortal, eternal life from. Personal salvation. All of these gods offered that in the particular religions of the time, including through baptism and communal meals and things like that. All of these savior figures are usually mythical. So we need better evidence for Jesus than we have for Socrates, and yet we don't even have for Jesus what we have for Socrates. We have nothing alike. So that's the reason. It's not just the silence of the evidence. It's the weird sequence of evidence that doesn't match the sequence of evidence for any other historical person that we're confident in. And get back to the Talmudic Jews argument. You can't argue that they're giving you any reliable information if they can't even get the correct century that Jesus was killed in. They can't even, don't even know about the crucifixion, that he's stoned to death for wizardry, for sorcery. So their story is clearly wildly off book. So they have no concept of Pontius Pilate. They have no concept of the Romans being involved. It's 100 years earlier. So they had no reliable information. So you can't cite them. They clearly don't know what they're talking about at that time, and clearly had no access to any reliable information to talk about Jesus. So the information is useless. It's just centuries later, wild hearsay. We can't base anything on, unfortunately. So when we get to Tacitus, Tacitus doesn't mention his sources for this, but all he does is repeat information that's exactly from the Gospels. And whereas we know for a fact that Tacitus got information and used information for his histories from his best friend Pliny. And we know for a fact his best friend Pliny interrogated Christians. We know for a fact that Pliny knew nothing about Christians until he interrogated them. And that Pliny didn't fact check them. Once he heard what the Christians had to say, he says, this is a ridiculous superstition, whatever. And so that's what Tacitus says too. Tacitus repeats almost, not identical words, but very similar. He calls it a ridiculous superstition. So Tacitus, almost certainly, the only source that we can track that's likely for Tacitus is Pliny, who's just citing Christians in the 2nd century, who would just be repeating the Gospels. So we can't establish that Tacitus is independent of the Gospels. All he's doing is repeating information that's circulating. There's no evidence that he researched it, that he confirmed it was true, or anything like that. And that's why we can't use passages like Tacitus. And that's it, actually. I've answered all of the claims made so far.
All right. So I actually just think it's fascinating. And I think that what Carrier argues and others who are mythicists argue is interesting. Particularly this point about the order of evidence, starting from the mythological, going to the material, and the lack of evidence that exists. And the differences in evidence, and they get into more. It's a 3-hour. I'll put the link. It's a 3-hour debate, and in Carrier's in some of his work and other discussions I've seen, they get more into some of the nuances around how the evidence or lack thereof for Jesus stacks up against Socrates, Alexander, the so-called great, and several others, because the argument is, well, how come we don't, we don't have any evidence for them either? And as he was saying there, no, there's a lot of evidence for them that doesn't exist for Jesus. So I just think methodologically it's interesting, and I've and then if you watch the debate, GRLAHebrew is you could tell he's been spending time on those street corners as a Hebrew Israelite. He's good. But if you pay attention, all of it, what Carrier says about his argument is largely true. All of it goes back to you having to believe that the Gospels count as evidence, that what apparently many scholars believe that Josephus had to say about Jesus is true. And a lot of scholars apparently think that what Josephus has said to have written about Jesus was not actually written by Josephus. And yeah, so I just think it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and I do hope people. I agree with Josh on this one. Hopefully, people read the scholarship themselves in a safe space for honest reflection, because if you agree with Carrier, being around the guerrilla Hebrews of the world is not a good. You're not in a safe space, because there's not a lot of room for even the consideration of those arguments. And everything that Hebrew is saying is again asking you. You have to take the Gospels as fact. So, Michael Cynical says, I like how Michael Hudson discussed the likelihood that Jesus was a combination of three different people who died around the same time, all poor Jews who disliked the wealthy. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, all right. So real quick, the other thing I wanted to actually, I wanted to play some of this too. Hold on. I hope you all are able to stick around a little bit. And again, thank you all for helping us make the goal. In fact, let me see if I can I do this real quick? What was the final tally on the so I see one flaw here compared to StreamYard is that this doesn't automatically pin Super Chat. So, and it doesn't even save. Okay, I'm gonna have to go through this actual stream. Okay, so I found another flaw in my talking about methodology. I found another flaw in my own. So let's see can I pull up the. Oh, it doesn't even let you pull them up from the goal. But we did get 10 super chats. So let's see. Ooh, and it doesn't even save in the chat itself. Let's see. Live chat. Oh man, I'm really gonna have to go back and do the work. That's messed up. I don't like that part. But all right, my bad. Unless the maybe the analytics will do this for me. Maybe the analytics will do this for me. But anyway, I'll get the money over to the Jericho movement, and so thank you all for that. But I did want to play a little bit of this other video that I came across. And again, the links to all of these will be in the show description, because you should watch Namibia's brutal reality. So Wayne Tesfaye, she's
Namibia
as a mother of two who's taking her children all around Africa. So she does all these reports from her trips around the continent. And this is from her trip to Namibia. And I just wanted to play her intro. And again, I encourage you to check
often
out
presented as one of the most underrated countries on the African continent. And I totally agree. It's one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever visited. However, not enough people talk about the legacy of colonialism and the massive land theft that I have witnessed there. I spent 3 days on a 43,000 hectare big farm owned by a single German family. And I'm still in shock. And that is why I decided to share my shocking experience in Namibia.
Message!
I've learned from engaging in conversations with locals and descendants of German settlers who are still in denial.
Well, sorry about that. I'll put the link in the show description. I just wanted to play that little piece of it because that's what her focus is on. How does one German family have all that land? How do Germans to this day still have all that land? And of course, she recounts the history of how the sort of the precursor to the Holocaust in Europe was what the Germans did to Africans in Southern Africa. And that they would anybody would still have that much land there. So but before I leave, I do want to check, are there any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation, contemplation? And then does anybody have any requests for members and patrons special content? So I already have folks asking some stuff about my personal life and background. How was I politicized? Lateef had the idea of my beef memoir. Yeah, but if there's anything else you all would want from members or patrons, special patrons only or first content, I'm open for that too. We can take a couple minutes that. Otherwise, if you got stuff to do, if you got somewhere to be, peace, and I'll catch up with you later on. Thanks for coming through. Librarian, thank you for the super chat. And even though we're past the goal, I will continue to add anything that we get tonight to the Jericho movement. So I've re-uploaded to this channel my StoryCorps interview with my mother. So it's on the platform. Please check it out if you're interested. I'm very glad that I did it. Because it was taped in 2003, but so it was before my wedding. It was before my children. My mother's sister was supposed to have been involved, but she fell ill and then unfortunately passed away like 2 months later. So I was glad to get my mother's interview on there, especially by now because she's still here. She's still alive, but the Alzheimer's it's not a functional relationship and she doesn't remember anything. And I remember, some of you might remember, I said this on the remix, that the sign for me that my mother was, beyond return was when Kissinger died. And I went to see her and I said, Kissinger died, and she didn't remember who he was. And that kind of let me know, okay, we've crossed the because she hated Kissinger. She had a special hatred of Kissinger and would have reveled in his passing, in his death. She called for it. She advocated it for so long. So I'm glad that I did it. And I'm glad we did that interview. My children get to listen to it and get to experience their grandmother in a way that they would not have had a chance to, because even before she dipped out, sort of mentally, she didn't remember everything that she remembered, almost 20 years ago. And over 20 years. Yeah, over 20 years ago now. And so yeah, and there's some, so it's good that we got that in there, and I'm glad to have been able to put it up, and the response has been pretty impressive. I do have interviews with my brother, and I have one up where we talk about our father, but I don't have any other interviews with the nation about the nation. I wish I had my classic discussion with Cedric Muhammad about when I was still doing radio about the Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews book. But so let's see. One question here, Dr. Ball. Debt and plague are both said to be 5,000 years old. How might that relate to racism and slavery? Debt and plague are both said to be 5. I don't know if I get the question, but I don't know. Racism and slavery. Well, I mean, are you arguing that plague and debt are related in the way racism and slavery are related? I don't know. My thing is just sort of related to the thing about why does it keep doing that? If I'm hitting, yeah, why does it keep doing that? Kind of like the way I feel about the question of, did racism emerge as a result of capitalism, or did capitalism as a emerge as a result of the race or class? And my thing is, my cop out is, at this point it doesn't matter to me. The social construct has solidified and concretized over the last 500,000 years or whatever of European expansion, and that each need to be dealt with and addressed. They're both here and inextricably linked. So if racism emerged as a specific result of enslavement of Africans, and enslavement of Africans resulted as a specific need based on the availability of surviving Europeans, indigenous people, etc., and not as a particular target of blackness, whatever, I get it. I get the logic of that argument, but we are here. And yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm an Africana advocate, a Black studies enthusiast. To equate to the science communication of a Professor Dave, that would be the point there. So anyway, yeah, Vincent, I'm sorry, I don't know if I did justice to your question, but that's sort of where I'm at with it, or at least how I understood what you were asking there. No, I appreciate that, Jamon 93. But it's a lot of us. Obviously, everybody's parents got to go. We all got to go. It's just a terrible. Alzheimer's, though, is a pretty diabolical disease. It's a pretty gross. It's a particularly dastardly affliction. And I remember years ago, I used to watch that show, Rescue Me. Anybody ever watched that firefighter drama? Silly. It was silly. But I remember there was this one where the chief, his wife had dementia, and he put her in a facility. And the Jamaican woman that was taking care of her, with whom he would end up having a sort of a tryst, she said to him, "Stop coming to visit your wife. She doesn't benefit from it. You definitely don't benefit from it." And I was like, at the time, I was like, that is cold-blooded. But I kind of get it. I get it. I definitely now understand it. Yeah, Dennis Leary's show. But I get the logic. If we never showed up again, my mother wouldn't remember. She wouldn't know. But my kids still, she still does. She goes back and forth with remembering them a little bit. They still enjoy her. It's not. I don't enjoy the visits. I'm not going to front. I don't enjoy the visits because you're just looking at your mother. You're looking at your parent. You can't engage them as your parent. And sometimes she doesn't even. You could see she's struggling even to recognize me, or you could see she still kind of fronts a little bit too. You can see she still can, she can fake her way through it a little bit, but it's terrible. So no, I have not read Glubb's Fate of Empires. I've never even heard of it. The plague helped lift poor European whites out of serfdom. You know what? I've never seen and read anything about that. The impact of the plague on labor. So that's interesting. That's interesting. Oh wait, is Renee here? Oh, Renee Q&A. Maybe I misunderstood that. Yeah, I used to like Rescue Me was good. I enjoyed that show. I'm not gonna front. I enjoyed that. That was one of my. But all right, so let me just make sure. I think there were a couple other things I thought I might get to, but it's not that deep. It's not that. Oh, I do. So I am going to. I have been in the background engaged in some more discussion of Afro-pessimism. And someone has asked, so I'm going to invite them to discuss it here. I just heard their discussion of it and their criticism, and for me, it's the same. My same issues emerge. I don't think. So we'll talk about it, but again, essentially, I don't think that. Oh wait, I never read your super chat. Really? My bad. Let me see if I can find it again. I didn't. So it doesn't automatic. So that one I didn't catch. So StreamYard will automatically pin super chats. Restream doesn't do that, and then I cannot go back and find. Let me see if I can go over here and do it over here. Let me see something real quick. Oh, Primate Czar. Let me see. I see that question. I don't know if I can find it to pull it up. But your question, Primates, are about the blockchain socialist. Have I considered what I consider? So again, with me, I was always willing to discuss this with them. They were not interested in discussing it with me as I remember it. Now I can't find your comment to pull it up here. But again, my argument was always with Bitcoin socialists. Here it is. Have you thought about asking blockchain socialists on the show again? He's not anonymous anymore. I didn't know that, and I haven't, but so maybe I will. But again, my issue was always that their argument seemed to presuppose some pre-existing socialist organization engaging blockchain for radical purposes. That to me is very different than what Farina and others are advocating within Black and African spaces. They're not advocating that a pre-organized radical body engage blockchain or Bitcoin. They're advocating that individuals engage as sort of an individual yet collective pathway to advance, which just doesn't. So in each case, I disagree. In terms of, if we have a pre-organized, radically socialist, militant if the primitive accumulation of organization occurs first, then yeah, anything an already organized radical entity engages is going to be more likely. Yeah. So that was always my thing, but I haven't thought about it, and I didn't know that they were no longer anonymous. And I would. I mean, for the most part, I will. I mean, I'll discuss or whatever with anybody. I don't really. All right, so let's see. So I can go into my studio here and see that on January 8th, during this show, we've raised, let's see, 10, 15, 17, 37, 40, 47, 57, 67, 77, 87, 97, 107, 110, 115. We've raised $115 tonight. So I will, let's Jericho movement donate. Let's see. What did I say? 115? Oh my God. So let's just make it 100. And I'll just, you know what, just in case some others, I'll just go ahead and let's see. I don't want the cookies. Let's just do, we'll make it 150. We'll cover the fees. Do it through PayPal. Get the thing in there. And then let me get my code. Boom. And boom, boom. There it is. Boom. Good job, everybody. Good job, everybody. And if a few of you want to add, I've covered a couple extra dollars, but otherwise, you're not lying. 8:15 is like 2 a.m. for me. It might as well be, and I got a little bit of this. But the family's out, so I got nothing. I mean, I really am in no hurry. So let me just let's see. So okay, but anyway, but I am in touch with somebody who I'm pretty sure is going to be willing to come on here to talk a little bit both about Stuart Hall and then also about Afro-pessimism. And so far, my argument with them is just the same that it's been with everybody. It's that I think people are more critical of how people in these streets interpret Frank's work than they are critical of what Frank is actually saying. I don't read Frank's work. I don't hear Frank. And as I'm reposting again tomorrow morning, I don't hear Frank saying that Black people shouldn't be in solidarity with people. Black people shouldn't be fighting. Black people should give up. I don't hear him saying any of that. So when I hear people say, but Afro-pessimism encourages, and in this person in an interview they sent me was saying Afro-pessimism encourages, doesn't respect or acknowledge or appreciate the Black art and soul and struggle. And I was like, I don't get that. I don't get that when I hear his argument. So that's basically, it's always my, it's not that everything is right in what Frank is arguing. And of course, people have the personal thing with him too, that they don't often want to admit. I don't know if that's the case with the person I'm thinking of here, but in any event. All right. Any other comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, uncles, uncle? What was your? I forgot your full name, and I can't find your. Wait a minute. Yes, I can. I can look at it where I was just looking. Hold on. Oh no, I can't see the comment though. So Uncle Truth, yes, I did. I can find it. Okay, have you heard the YouTube channel named Eyes Wide Open? It fully documents the history of the CIA. They just did a video on George Bush Sr. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that, but I am familiar with some histories of the CIA. I'm very much interested in looking at that. But I had not seen it beforehand. And Comrade Trav, thank you very much. I appreciate you too. Thank you very much for your super chat. Even though you know what, that wasn't from tonight. I'm looking at I went too far. I went too far in the list here. But either way, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you too. William Reddish, thank you for the super sticker. Old Dirty Kung Fu, Boom Shakalaka, thank you very much. Drums of Liberation, thank you as well. Internetager, thank you. King Ase, thank you. Wilford Doucette, thank you. Librarian, thank you. ZZ Lion came back again. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Vincent. Sorry if I misunderstood you. Oh, right. Yeah, you were okay. You were just explaining that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I have to check that out. Very interesting. Poncho, first of all, when we got to schedule, I got to get a copy of the book, and then we got to schedule your interview for your forthcoming book. Congratulations. That's dope. Tafari will be on in his crew 8 a.m. Monday morning live to talk about Black visual arts and the Black visual arts movement today. And it's Tafari's photography that is the thumbnail. You saying the CIA documentary, Josh, is fantastic? Is that the one you're talking about? The channel? Okay. Oh, did you? Word. Thank you, Poncho. Thank you very much. I'm gonna buy it though. I'm gonna buy it. I support the homies. Even back in the day when I used to get mixtapes from rappers and whatnot, if I was friends with them, I bought it. Don't give me no free stuff. I'll buy it. Okay, right on. Thank you, Chitty Matcha. I'll check it out. All right. Well, listen, good people. Thank you very much for coming through and hanging out. I've definitely had a good time. I hope you had a good time, and maybe we'll keep doing these Saturday Night Lives. We'll see. I think it's funny to call 6 p.m. night, but and I basically got to everything. I think I got to everything. So that's what's up. All right. Listen, please do like, share, subscribe. Join the channel if you can. I am rebuilding this channel. I would like to get at least back to the original 5,000 subscribers I had when we started the BPM project, which is still going, still support. But if I can, get back to that original baseline, I'll be good. Although, I'm good now, it's whatever. But I got no thoughts on it. I'm sure it was dope. I saw some of it. The Millennials Are Killing Capitalism and all of their team ups with Gantt are dope. But I have not read that Robinson work, so I don't know. I got to get caught up on that. I'm behind on all of that. Yeah, I am tired. But I'm sure it's dope. Mtume is sharp. Jared Ware is not only sharp, but I think a really good interviewer when it comes to these kinds of complicated, high-level thinking topics. And I'm sorry to say I've not read that work from Robinson. So, but again, I'm sure that what they did is fantastic. So eventually I'll get caught up. But yeah, so please do like, share, subscribe, and put this in your socials, tag me, do all those things. Make sure that we don't fall into the...
You just don't read, beloved.
So I got work to do, specifically around the Robinson stuff, but at least that piece, at least. And, thank you, because when I showed up earlier, I really appreciate you all, because when I showed up earlier, I definitely was...
Everybody, shut the hell up. It's a lot that I got to get off my chest right now. It's a lot. Shut up. All right? It's a lot.
Shout out to Big Simple. And I think his Washington Commanders are doing well. Aren't they good now? I don't know. It figures they'd get good when I quit the NFL, but either way, that level of trauma got to stop. Anyway, thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate you coming through. I had a good time. I hope you had a good time as well. To those who will see and hear this later, peace to you as well. Under the one condition, as Fred Hampton put it, that you're willing to fight for it. And I will catch you next time here at...
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.